the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask a couple questions to kick us off, then Gavin and Theresa are going to read, then we're going to talk a little bit more, and then I'm going to ask you to ask questions. So if you have a question, store it up and save it for the end, and I will call on you. First, though, let me introduce Gavin and Theresa formally. Gavin McCrea was born in Dublin in, should I say?
Sure.
1978, guys. And has since traveled widely, living in Japan, Belgium, and Italy, among other places. He holds a BA and an MA from University College Dublin, and an MA and a PhD from the University of East Anglia, which is like the Iowa of overseas. This is Engels. His first novel was longlisted for the Guardian First Book Award. It's received starred reviews everywhere one can receive a starred review, pretty much. It was an Amazon October debut of the month, so you have good reason to be proud of him. And Therese Anne Fowler's most recent book, Z, a novel of Zelda Fitzgerald, was a New York Times bestseller, and is now in development, I saw this on your website, as an original dramatic television series produced by and starring Christina Ricci. That's right. Which is pretty cool. She's also a baseball fan, and has taught workshops and classes at many conferences, and she's universities, including North Carolina State. That's right. So, first question that I have for you, Gavin. Gavin's book brings to life the voice of Lizzie Burns, who is the longtime lover of Frederick Engels, co-writer of the Communist Manifesto with Karl Marx. Lizzie was an illiterate mill worker and at Frederick's mill. And it's such a specific and unique person to choose to write your first book about, and I'm curious about why were you so compelled by her, by her story?
Can I say a few thanks before I answer that question? I just wanted to thank Catapult for having me here today, and for Judy for agreeing to compare. I also want to thank my editor, Pat Strachan, who's in the audience, for taking me on. It's a real honour to be working with someone of your caliber. She's worked with some very big names, including my country people, Ed O'Brien and James Healy, and great names like Marilyn Robinson, so it's a real honour to be working with her. I also want to thank the handsome and enigmatic Andy Hunter, who is my age but kind of puts me to shame in what he's achieved so young, so it's pretty amazing the team he's put together at Catapult. And then there's the magician Jennifer Abel-Kovitz, who has done the almost impossible. The 3 pillars of capitalism: Oprah, Amazon, what's the third one? Wall Street Journal. She's managed to infiltrate an indie book about communism into those three places. So you don't get better than a miracle worker. So. The question was about Lizzie. I came across Lizzie by chance. She was mentioned in a review of a biography of Frederick Engels. It was just 2 or 3 words about her, something like Frederick Engels, comma, who's Irish lover, comma, and then moved on to something else. And I said, Irish lover, Frederick Engels, I've never heard that before. So I bought the biography and realized there was very little in the biography about her. Not by any fault of the writer, the biography is very good, but just there's nothing known about her. So I knew that would be a really fascinating, she would be a fascinating pair of eyes on that particular world.
Can you read a little bit for us?
Sure. So I'm going to read just the opening couple of pages. And Lizzie is the eyes on the world of Marx and Engels, who are obviously the authors of the Communist Manifesto. So I wanted to begin the book with a kind of manifesto for Lizzie. And the rest of the book is a kind of exploration about whether her life conforms with or contradicts this manifesto. No one understands men better than the women they don't marry. And my own opinion, but known only to God, is that the difference between one man and another doesn't amount to much. It's no matter what line he's in or which ideas he follows. whether he's sweet-tempered or ready-witted, a dab at one business or the next, for there isn't so much in any of that, and you won't find a man who hasn't something against him. What matters over and above the contents of his character, what makes the difference between sad and happy straits for she who must put her life in his keeping, is the mint that jingles in his pockets. In the final reckoning, the good and the bad come to an even naught, and the only thing left to recommend him is his money. Young lasses, yet afflicted with strong feeling, and seeking a likely subject for a tender passion, will say that money has no place in their thoughts. They make exceptions of themselves, and pass on good matches, for they believe that you must feel a thing, and that this thing can be pure only if it's a poor figure it's felt for. To such lasses I says, take warning. This is a changing world. We don't know today what will happen tomorrow, and the man you go with will decide where you're put, whether it's on the top or on the bottom, or where. The fine feelings love will bring won't match the volume of problems a pauper will create. Odds are the handsome fella you go spoony on will turn out to be a bad bargain, white-livered and empty of morals. The gospel grinder is sure to have his own blameworthy past and will drag you to the dogs. The flash charm will come to act the tightwad, insisting you live on naught a year. The clever wit will loiter away his hours, believing others must provide his income, and the happiness you anticipated will never turn into happiness enjoyed. There'll always be something wanting. Better, the only honest way, is to put away your hopes of private feeling and search out the company of a man with means, a man who knows the value of brass and is easy enough with it. Make your worth felt to him. Woo his protection as he woos your affections, in the good way of business, and the reward will be comfort and ease, and there's naught low or small in that. Is it of any consequence that he isn't a looker, or a rare mind, or a fancy poet, as long as he's his own man and is improving you? This must be calculated on. Love is a bygone idea, centuries worn. There's things we can go without, and love is among them. Bread and a warm hearth are not. Is it any wonder there's heaps of ladies, real ladies, biding to marry the first decent man who offers them 500 a year? Young flowers, don't be being left behind on the used-up shelf. If you must yearn for things, let those things be feelings, and let your yearning be done in a first-class carriage like this one, rather than in one of those reeking compartments down back, where you'll be on your feet all day and exposed to winds and forever stunned by the difficulty of your life. Establish yourself in a decent situation and put away what you can, that, please God, one day you need no man's help. Take it and be content, then you'll journey well.
So I love how that section actually, for those of you who haven't read the book, sort of immediately speaks to something that these two folks have in common, which is that they're narrated by women who shape and are shaped by their relationships to men who are part of the public consciousness. They're sort of like the footnotes to the men. So in the way that Gavin, you chose Lizzie, like, Therese, what were you, why Zelda Fitzgerald? I mean, she's especially different than Lizzie in the sense that we're not going to find her as a review of a biography, in a review of a biography. Right. We know about Zelda, we have ideas of who she is, and in a way she's almost been hijacked by so many competing different interpretations of what she means. But why did you want to write about her?
You know, it's interesting. I was not, as so many people are, sort of rabid Zelda Fitzgerald fans. I didn't really know very much about Zelda, and quite honestly, I was considering some other ideas one day, several years back, when I was just sort of struck out of nowhere, quite honestly, out of nowhere, by this idea. What about Zelda Fitzgerald? And what I thought I knew about Zelda is very much what the public perception of Zelda seems to be, and it sort of all traces back to Ernest Hemingway's A Movable Feast. There's this sort of version of Zelda as the crazy woman who derailed Scott Fitzgerald's life, right, who drove him to drink, who prevented him from achieving his potential. And so initially my response to the sort of what about Zelda Fitzgerald question was, who cares? am not interested in a woman who is sort of antithetical to what I care about as a writer.
Yeah.
Okay. But I was curious enough by the way the idea had come to me to just look up a little bit of information about her. And what I discovered very quickly was that there were things about Zelda that I had gotten wrong. You don't have to dig very far below that surface to see that the common story is not the whole story. And so the more I learned, the more intrigued I became, and then I was sort of just needed to champion this woman who was sort of maligned publicly, and it grew from there. It became kind of an obsession.
Yeah. Would you mind reading a little bit so we can get a sense of your Zelda?
You know, unlike my fellow writer here, I am not natural to the southern dialect. So,
well, I have a male voice reading it.
I know. So we're sort of even in that regard, right? I'm going to read the prologue of the novel, which, as many of you probably know enough about Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda, that things ended badly for them in 1940. This prologue opens in December of 1940, and then the book proceeds from early in their relationship and catches up to the prologue in the end. So where we are right now is Montgomery, Alabama. It's December 20th, 1940, and this is a letter, starts with a letter that Zelda has written to Scott. Dear Scott, The Love of the Last Tycoon is a great title for your novel. What does Max say? I've been thinking that maybe I'll brave an airplane ride and come to see you for New Year's. Wire me the money if you can. Won't we be quite the pair? You with your bad heart, me with my bad head. Together, though, we might have something worthwhile. I'll bring you some of those cheese biscuits you always loved, and you can read me what you've written so far. I know it's going to be a wonderful novel, Scott, your best one yet. This is short, so I can send it before the post office closes today. Write me soon. Devotedly, Z. If I could fit myself into this mail slot here, I'd follow my letter all the way to Hollywood, all the way to Scott, right up to the door of our next future. We have always had a next one, after all, and there's no good reason we shouldn't start this one now. If only people could travel as easily as words, wouldn't that be something? If only we could be so easily revised. The postmaster comes, keys jingling, to lock up. How are you, Miss Saya, he says, despite knowing that I've been Mrs. Fitzgerald since 1920. He is full-blood Alabama, Sam is. Saya from him is Saya, whereas I have come to pronounce those trailing soft consonants somewhat after living away for so long. I tuck my hands into my sweater's pockets and move toward the door. I'm just about right as rain, Sam, thanks. I hope you are. He holds the door for me. Been worse. Have a good evening now. I have been worse, too. Far worse, and Sam knows this. Everyone in Montgomery knows this. I see them staring at me when I'm at the market or the post office or church. People whisper about how I went crazy, how my brother went crazy, how sad it is to see Judge Sayo's children spoil his legacy. It all comes from the mother's side, they whisper, despite Mama, whose main crime is that she came from Kentucky, being as sound and sensible as any of them, which, now that I think of it, may not be saying much. Outside, the sun has sunk below the horizon, tired of this day, tired of this year, as ready as I am to start anew. How long before Scott gets my letter? How long till I get his reply? I'd buy a plane ticket first thing tomorrow if I could. It's time I took care of him for a change. It's time. That commodity, once so plentiful that we spent it on all-day hangovers and purposeless outings with people I've long forgotten, has become more precious than we ever imagined it could be. Too many of our dear ones are ruined now or gone. Nothing except luck protects you from catastrophe. Not love, not money, not faith, not a pure heart or good deeds, and not bad ones either for that matter. We can, any of us, be laid low, cut down, diminished, destroyed. Take me, for example. Until moving here to live with Mama this past April, I endured 6 years in a series of sanitariums in order to heal my broken brain and fractured spirit. Scott, meantime, straggled through a bunch of different hotels and inns and towns, always nearby me, until Hollywood beckoned again and I urged him to go. His luck hardly improved. For 3 years now, he's battled liquor and studio executives. He had a minor heart attack earlier this month. Though I suspect he has someone out there. He writes to me all the time and always ends his letters with dearest love. Even now, when we haven't shared an address in 6 years, when he's probably shining his light on some adoring girl who surely thinks she has saved him, we're both telling it true. This is what we've got at the moment, who we are. It's not nearly what we once had, the good, I mean, but it's also not what we once had, meaning the bad. Mildred Jameson, who taught me sewing in high school, calls to me from her porch as I pass. Say, Zelda, when's that fellow of yours coming back for you? We're celebrities in this town, Scott and me. Folks here have followed our doings all along, clipping articles about us, claiming events and friendships that are as inventive as any fiction Scott or I ever wrote. You can't stop the gossip or even combat it hardly, so you learn to play along. He's writing a new movie script, I tell her, which is sexier than the truth. He's done with the studios forever, he says, and is working only on the book. Mildred moves to the porch rail. You can't spend another Christmas apart. Her gray hair is set in pins and covered by a filmy scarf. Tell him to hurry up, for goodness sake, and tell him to put that handsome Clark Gable in the picture. Oh my, I do love Rhett Butler. I nod and say, I'll tell him. Make certain you do, and tell him to be quick about it. We aren't any of us getting any younger. I'm sure he's working as fast as he can. At a dinner we attended for James Joyce in Paris back in '28, Scott lamented Gatsby's lackluster sales and his slow start at writing a new book. Joyce told him that he, too, was making slow progress on a new novel, which he hoped to complete in 3 or 4 more years. Years, Scott kept saying afterward, never anticipating that 9 strange and tumultuous ones would pass between Gatsby and his next. And now again it's been 6, but I am persuaded that he's going to finish this novel soon. After everything he's been through, every disappointment, every insult, this novel will restore him, not only to his readers, but also to himself. The other day he wrote to me, I found a title, The Love of the Last Tycoon. What do you think? Meanwhile, I finished Ernest's For Whom the Bell Tolls. It's not as good as his last, which explains why Hollywood's giving him over $100,000 for it. Together with the $50,000 he'll make for it being the first book of the month selection, he's really rolling in it like we never were, though we did put on a good show. Quite a change from when all he could afford were those awful rooms over the sawmill in Paris, isn't it? Ernest. Scott thinks we are all on an even keel nowadays, he and Hemingway and me. He said the new book came to him inscribed, To Scott, with affection and esteem. He was so pleased. What I might have replied, but didn't, is that Hemingway can afford to be magnanimous. Why wouldn't he tread the high road now that we are all in the places that, by his measure, we're supposed to be? Scott went on, I just came across my Montgomery Country Club membership card from 1918, issued to Lieutenant F.S. Fitzgerald. Do you remember that guy? Bold and dashing and romantic. Poor soul. He was wildly in love with writing and life, and a particular Montgomery debutante all the lesser fellows said was ungettable. His heart still hasn't fully recovered. I wonder if we're completely ruined, you and I. That's the prevailing opinion, but you've had a pretty good month since you left the hospital, and my outlook's improving too. Haven't touched a drink since last winter. Can you even imagine that? But Zelda, what wouldn't you give to go back to the beginning, to be those people again, the future so fresh and promising that it seems impossible not to get it right? Lord help me, I miss him. I wish I could tell everyone who thinks we're ruined, who thinks Scott's beyond washed up, and I'm about as sharp these days as a sack of wet mice. Look closer. Look closer and you'll see something extraordinary, mystifying, something real and true. We have never been what we seem.